next year, starting quarterback for your Washington Commanders. Which of the three R's do you go with? The first R, a rookie that you draft in the 2024 NFL Draft. The second R, Russ Wilson, who it will now be a high-profile free agent. He's 35 years old and was just benched by the Denver Broncos yesterday. Or do you go with a retread, an in-houser? Do you give Sam Howell another crack at it? Do you sign Jacoby Brissett if he looks good during the last stretch of the 2023 campaign? Those are your three choices. 800-636-1067.
All right, so let's go through it. I'll start in reverse order.
Mm-hmm.
Retread. I'm sorry, you're going to win 4 games this year.
Right.
I can't bring back as my primary starter Sam Howell.
Right.
Jacoby Brissett could impress me here the last 2 weeks. He's impressed me in limited work. He only has 23 pass attempts, but you talked about it. 5 drives, 5 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It's been impressive. But he has a body of work for years. He's kind of, I put him in, Tyrod Taylor's going to start for the Giants this week. I put him in the class with Tyrod Taylor. I put him in the class with Case Keenum, where you're pretty much a career backup. You can win some games here and there, and you want him on your team.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't enter the season with Jacoby Brissett as my starter.
Solid pros.
So I'm eliminating retreads right off the bat. Not interested in retreads. Russ, 26 touchdowns and 8 picks is a little intriguing. But then you go deeper into the numbers. You see where he's ranked in QBR. He's 21st. That's kind of Sam Howell territory, actually. And my bigger takeaway is just keep it simple. We saw this with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had good stats his last season with the Colts. EB touted him 1,000,000 times. But the Colts moved on from him for a reason. The Eagles moved on from him for a reason. The Commanders, Washington, was his 3rd team. 2 failures, and Washington was grasping, Ron Rivera grasping, saying, I've seen the tape. That Wentz was going to figure it out in Washington. Didn't work. I'm not interested in being the 3rd stop for Russell Wilson.
Right.
So out on that, I'm in with rookie. I saw a mock draft today. It's kind of laughable. I think it was from some site called Draft Nation. I had never heard of it. It was absurd, Marvin Harrison Jr. going number 1. They had Drake May going 2 and Caleb Williams falling to the Commanders at 3.
I mean, that would be the absolute nut run out best case scenario for the Commanders.
You have no idea how the stock's going to go for some of these people up and down.
You don't know that. You don't know, like, somebody could trade with the Bears into the number 1 pick like they did this past offseason.
And the truth is, Caleb Williams had an inferior year this year to the year before when he won the Heisman.
Right.
This year, they lost more games. He had more interceptions. He wasn't quite as good.
See, that's where you have to put faith in to Josh Harris as far as he has to go out and find the right general manager to make all of these decisions going forward.
And you don't know the type of guys that these guys are. Like, I don't know much about Caleb Williams. I saw today that he liked to post. People can see everything you do on social media, even a stupid hit the heart button.
Yeah.
So he liked to post from somebody who said the Bears shouldn't draft Caleb Williams. I guess they're a Fields person.
Okay.
So they're supporting Fields. They're like, we have Fields, don't draft Caleb Williams. He liked that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean,
you can interpret that as he's supposedly kind of picky on what team he wants to play for. Do you want that guy? Do you want to deal with that? I don't know.
If he can come in and throw 30 touchdowns as a rookie, I'm going to be able to deal with it.
Well, of course.
I'll be able to deal with his social media shenanigans if he leads the team to wins on the field.
800
I can put up with that.
636-1067. I did put it up as the second Junkies poll today, brought to you by Van Meter Homes. Rookie, Russ, or retread. Russ doesn't even have 10%.
Really?
Nobody's voting
not
Russ.
Interested.
Now, I put retread, and I put in parentheses Howell/Jacoby.
Right.
So it's basically running it back with either one or both.
I'm going to guess that's getting, let me guess, 22% of the vote.
You nailed it, 22%.
22%.
You know what? Cakes can't bet, but he's pretty good at
I'm good
the
at
pulse of the
percentages.
people. You're good at polls.
I know
Junkies
what
polls.
people like, JP. I know what the public
So that leaves
likes.
69% on rookie. I'm with rookie. Are you with rookie?
Definitely with rookie. Like, especially if you're picking in the top 3. And look, if whoever the new GM is, say he loves a certain guy at 1 that he thinks isn't going to be there at 3, you can move up from 3 to 1 without giving up the King's ransom that the Panthers gave up last year to move up from, I believe they were at 9. They had to move from 9 to 1 to go up and get Bryce Young. Like, you can move up 2 spots. You're going to give up some draft capital, but you're not giving up multiple number 1 picks. Like, I would think a future number 1, maybe a future 3rd, probably gets that done to move up 2 spots into the number 1 spot. There's going to be competition for that spot, but like, if whoever the new GM just is resolute about getting a guy and doesn't think he's going to be there at 3, I also have no problem with moving up 2 spots just to secure the guy that you think is the future signal caller for your team. I mean, it's just a massively important draft selection.
Look, I'll acknowledge, I said this before, it's like a 50% hit rate when you look at guys drafted even very high
Certainly.
in the draft. I just picked a somewhat random year, 2019, looking at the draft. All right, that is the Kyler Murray drafted number 1 draft. Kind of a hit. He's starting. I don't think it's hit like they wanted to hit. He's not an elite quarterback. He's a starter. But they have a question mark as to whether they're going to continue with him. They probably will based on the contract they gave him, but he hasn't been what they wanted. The next quarterback drafted was Daniel Jones.
Right.
Bust. The next quarterback drafted, also a first-round pick, was Dwayne Haskins. Bust. Then you go to the second round, it's Drew Lock. Okay, nice story a couple weeks ago. He got a win, but he's a backup. It's tough. Like, you can just go through random years and go through the quarterbacks drafted in just the first, I'd just say like the first 2 or 3 rounds. And there's so many misses. But when you have a top 3 pick, I think you got to take a swing.
Yeah, and look, I'm not averse to trading up to number 1 if the guy that you covet, you don't think he's going to be there at 3. If this organization covets Caleb Williams, a local guy, could be the face of the franchise for the next dozen years if he hits, and you feel like you have to move from 3 to 1 to secure him, I have no problem with that. And I don't think the Harris group would hesitate to make a big, bold move like that to help kind of recharge the fan base, bring in a franchise quarterback, build around him, and just leave this carousel of middling to bad quarterbacks in the rearview mirror. 800-636-1067 is the number. Do you go with a rookie? Do you go with Russ? Or you go with a retread? Let's go out to Dan in Burke. Dan, you're on with the Junks. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Hello, Dan.
I'm thinking Michael Penix. I really like Washington this year, and I feel like he could be a good addition to the team.
I was kind of pro Penix 5 weeks ago. If you were going to tell me you were going to move forward with Sam Howell, remember we had the debate here, and 2/3 said they wanted Sam Howell to be the starter next year.
Yeah.
I said I was on the fence because at that moment, Sam Howell was playing good, but he hadn't done enough for me to be convinced he was the man of the future. Penix is graded right now as kind of a second-round quarterback. So I don't watch enough college football. When I've seen him in the highlights, obviously he looks great. I don't watch enough college football to know whether he's going to be a stud in the pros.
Let's go to John in Potomac. John, you're on with the Junks. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
What's up?
So the only R I really care about is that they don't bring back Ron.
Right.
But if you have to think that you're going to have a bad offensive line and all, I don't want to spend that draft capital on Caleb. What if we went something like this? What if we traded with the Bears, took Justin Fields, gave them a third-round pick and Curtis Samuel, and then we ended up taking Marvin Harrison Jr. first round?
So you're saying acquire Fields and then pick Marvin Harrison to pair with Terry and Jahan on the offense.
Correct.
I don't think it's good enough to win games. Here's what scares me about Justin Fields, and I know Cakes has kind of on the opposite side of this. You don't really think that wins, you don't like to put wins to quarterbacks.
Correct.
I do. It's not 100%. He's 9-28 in his career.
I mean,
9-28. I think he has he's a big reason that they're 9-28.
I mean, I'm sure he's a component of it, but it's not all on him. I mean,
I'm not saying it's all on him.
He was surrounded by just a heinous defense for most of the time that he's been there. Now they've improved, especially since they swung the trade for Montez Sweat. But for the majority of his career there, he's had a bad defense and pretty subpar weapons to throw to. That's how I would defend Justin Fields.
He could prove me wrong. I just would rather go with the rookie. And you're rolling the dice here. Look, I picked another random year case. So this is the 2018 NFL draft. All right?
Yep.
First round pick. Quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield 1.
I mean, he's
it's not a hit.
He's a mixed bag. Like
Correct.
It's
okay.
He's been resurrected this year, but he was trending towards bust because he was hopping around from team to team after his stint with the Browns.
Number 3 pick was Sam Darnold, certifiable bust. Number 7, Josh Allen, great pick.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10, Josh Rosen, bust.
Yep.
So 4 picks in the top 10, half of them busts, one of them okay, one of them a star, and then that, of course, is the Lamar Jackson draft.
Right.
He was picked 32nd. That's an absolute steal. But it's not exact science, but I still want to take the shot at it.
Let's go out to the West Coast. Steve calling in from L.A. Steve, you're on with the Junks. Good morning. Thanks for calling in at this early hour.
Good morning. Good
Hey,
morning,
Steve.
guys. I just want to say that, I think Ron is making the wrong decision. He keeps on making these wrong decisions. First he said how he didn't think Hal was the guy, and then he thinks Hal is the guy, and now he thinks Hal is not the guy. So all this flip-flopping, I mean, he's just like any other politician.
Well, Steve, here's the best part.
Himself.
You have 2 more weeks of bad Ron decisions, and then you never have to worry about him ever again.
No, but
2 more weeks.
If you look
That's
at
it.
the film, if you look exactly, thank goodness for that. But if you look at the film, I think Hal, his bad performance, at least in the last game, is not entirely due to him, right? I think if you what that guy Kine says, he probably needs to make better decisions, right? I mean, how do you get to make?
So
better
do you support
decisions?
Hal if you had to pick rookie, Russ, or retread, and Hal, we're throwing him in the retread category, you would run it back with Sam Howell next year?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think, 16 games, whatever, how many games, I've seen enough. I think that he's just like any other rookie quarterback. He needs to get better. I mean, how do you get better other than playing? I think that he
Are
has
you
shown
worried that
enough.
maybe he was exposed, that teams got more and more film on him, figured out ways to defend the Commanders
Thank you,
better
Steve.
with Sam Howell in the pocket?
Here's how you get better. You find a better player, in my opinion. You find a better player, and you generally do that by picking high in the first round of the draft.
Here's my issue, and I don't know how much of an issue it is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have the 3rd pick, maybe even have the 2nd pick.
Okay.
Now all of a sudden you don't even have a GM in place. You have no structure in place.
Right.
Are you going to be able to do a turnaround this quickly? Because the draft's in April, isn't it?
Well, they're going to have a GM in place.
I would think.
I know, but is that enough? Is that enough
Yes,
time
it's
to
enough
have
time.
Well,
to have
I
everything
mean-
in place to
Definitely.
Hold on.
to put together everything
You think
need?
Josh Harris doesn't already have a list of 8 to 10 people that he's already either pre-interviewed or is getting ready to interview?
I don't know.
I feel like he's going to have his GM in place within 2 weeks after Ron is whacked, and then that's what mid to late January. That gives you plenty of time to get all your operations up and running. I would think get your staff in place.
I think it's a legitimate question.
I think it's a question. It's a legit question, but I think most of those guys are prepared. They're just preparing on other teams. Does it put you behind the 8 ball some to know the personnel of your new team? Yes, but they're preparing for a draft. Like if you take the guy from the Ravens or you take the guy from the 49ers, they know the college players. They're preparing on those players. Now, they have to then assess what they have in Washington and whether or not they fill that position. But here's the thing. For all of those guys, They're going to look at all the positions, pretty much all the positions in Washington and say, yeah, we need to upgrade here. We need to upgrade there. And then it's just a matter of the priority.
The problem is that Ron has basically made this team into an expansion franchise, and that you have so many holes in the dam you need to plug that
it's going to take some time.
Is that it's not going to be an overnight thing, and I feel like by drafting a quarterback without any of these pieces in place, then it's just going to be the Sam Howell experience over and over.
Although I think what you would do, if you get the right guy in the draft, you can build up the offensive line to improve that. You can run it back with the receivers and the running backs. I'm not saying they're great. Grasp at a tight end maybe in free agency. So that's your offense. Now defense, you got a couple of defensive tackles you pay a lot in Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne.
Yep.
You got a couple players, and there are a lot of holes to fix.
Well, I think that GM might be moving some of those expensive pieces during the offseason. What do you want the Commanders to do at quarterback? Do you want a rookie? Do you want Russ? Or do you want a retread? Howell and or Jacoby?
I think the other R should be or a run it back.
A run it back?
I kind of combine run it back and retread because retread you sometimes think of people that are elsewhere, but I put in parentheses for retread Jacoby and Howell because those would be Commanders retreads.
Right.
And running it back. I would be curious. I'm not going to call him in Nashville, but I'd be curious where EB is because EB would be a little bit torn. He always pats himself on the back like he discovered Russell Wilson. Right. It's one of the many guys he talks about. But he was entrenched as a howler until last week where he was kind of beaten down. See, the fight between him and Drab, you missed the fight between him and Drab. But it was really because it came to a boiling point of, you know how it is with Bickle. He gets all fired up for the team every year.
Sure.
And then it goes the other way, and then he's going to blow his top at some point. So he lost his temper because basically Sam Howell's failed him. That's the way that he sees it.
It also tells me.
And he's also stubborn. Like he's still saying, oh, it might work. But you could just tell with his body language, his face, that he's lost it for Sam. How could you not?
The bigger takeaway is it's exhausting being a Commanders fan. It just wears on you mentally, physically, but emotionally.
Where do you think, Valdez? You can read EB well. So where do you think he would fall in Russ, who he's a fan of, and Russ 26 touchdowns, 8 picks? He could make all the same arguments he did with Wentz.
This is what I
run it back / retard with Howell.
I guarantee you this is what he would want to do. He would say, let's bring in Russ, and we'll have a competition with Sam and Russ. He wants both.
See, because
two losers.
Because he doesn't want to admit.
Yeah.
Deep down, he knows.
He
in
knows
his heart.
it. Yes.
Well, no, he knows this in his heart of hearts.
He goes, I wouldn't mind having them both here.
No.
That's what he would say. I guarantee you that's what he would say.
Every time I bring up, you got to draft a quarterback high. The hit rate, even though it's 50%, even at the top of the draft, you have a better chance of landing a premium quarterback when you're picking in the top 10, top 15 than you do of an outlier weirdo like Sam Howell who's picked in the 5th round.
That's
like
only logical and evidence-based.
Those guys never hit. Never.
Well,
okay, you have a few outliers, but for every guy that hits in the 5th round, there are 500 that miss.
I think Bickle would start.
Bickle
would start with kind of what he did last week, like he plays it like I don't care, nobody cares, we never get it right. It's impossible to find the guy. It's the hardest job in the world. It's impossible. So he starts with the let's not even try, and then he'll maybe say, yeah, but he's a howler and a Russ guy.
Okay, but he has to know that Howell, okay, maybe he improves and becomes a capable every week starter. But right now, the jury on that is out on that. Like, we don't know if that's going to happen. And Russ, he's damaged goods. He's 35 years old. He's hopping from team to team. Like, the extension that the Broncos gave him is probably the worst extension in the history of pro football. They can't wait to get out of the Russell Wilson business. Like, why would this ownership want to start with that sort of, like, that's their first real big move at quarterback? No. It just doesn't make sense.
I don't think so.
I don't see that happening at all.
How many times did Bickle tell me that I was going too far when I was saying that Howell's touchdown to interception ratio was close to Davis Mills being 1-to-1. He was like, no, no.
He just didn't want him being comp to that guy.
It's damn year 1-to-1. It's 19 touchdowns and 17 picks.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to the phone.
You want to run it back with that guy? Where do you fall, Valdez?
I think there's
You were starting to be sold on Howell like 5 weeks ago. I think I think 5 weeks ago you were seeing where he would be the starter next year.
This is what would be my plan if I'm GM Valdez.
Okay, yes.
I would have a target at quarterback. All right, I would fall in love with one of the guys. That's my guy. If I am unable to get that guy
in the draft,
in the
talking
draft,
about.
yes, in the draft.
So it's not free agency like Kirk Cousins is going to be available.
Yep.
If I am unable to get the exact guy that I want, whether it's Caleb, Drake, Jaden Daniels,
Penix, whoever it is.
If I'm unable to get that guy, I am willing to trade out of 3, acquire more picks to plug as many of the holes as possible on this team.
Okay. So once you do that, then what is your plan at quarterback?
Then my plan at quarterback is to just run it back.
You know what?
It's a very long-term problem that I'm trying to fix.
So are you saying both Brissett and Howell come back? Or you run it back with Howell? You don't care about like Brissett just goes
I'd run it back with both of them.
You bring them both back.
I would do the whole charade again.
Okay, that would be your approach.
What is Mike Marr? Let's get a young man's
let's see this
opinion. What does Mike Marr think?
Young, analytically driven, probably like Harvard-educated version of Mike Marr.
I think you swing for the fences in the first round. You get Caleb Williams, you get Drake May, maybe even Jaden Daniels, and then I'd probably cap it at that. Michael Penix is really unproven. And if you can't get one of those, I agree with Valdez. Trade out, and then just you have $90 million in cap space. Go get a silly free agent quarterback.
There aren't that many silly free agent quarterbacks.
Is the most proven.
So
I'm like 26.
I'm looking at the free agent quarterbacks for next season.
His analytics machine might be broken.
I know.
Well, he didn't go to Ivy League.
I know. I said the Harvard-educated, analytically driven version of Mike Marr.
Kirk Cousins will be a free agent.
Okay.
2023 salary was $35 million.
Yeah.
So you'd have to pay a lot. He's coming off the Achilles. Baker Mayfield going to be a free agent.
Oh, he will.
Baker Mayfield having a
deal.
really good season. Outside of those two, then you're getting into the Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Drew Lock.
Those are non-starters.
Yeah.
Like you just can't.
I think Kirk and Baker would be the big names.
Those are your headliners.
And they're going to command big money if you went free agency.
Right. Yeah, I don't think free agency is going to be the route for the Commanders going forward.
And the other thing with Kirk in particular, you got to look at his age now.
Right. And coming off a major injury.
He'll be 35.
Right. As same age as Russ.
Baker's 28.
Yeah, I want my guy to be young and be able to grow into his role here. That's why I'd pick a rookie. I'm picking somebody in the top 3.
I'm in the rookie camp as well, Cakes.
All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Terry in D.C.
And I'm kind of a snob like you.
Yes.
I'm not going second round.
I'm a QB elitist.
I'm not going Bo Nix.
No, not doing that. Terry, you're on with the Junks. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I think one of you guys already stole my thunder in terms of bringing Brissett back and Howell back, and not because they necessarily have it. But I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of bringing in quarterbacks of any nature. I don't care if it's Howell, Brissett, if you draft one or you bring in a free agent. They need to go after the hometown guy from Penn State, Olu Fanashu, get the left tackle, build this O-line up at all costs. It's all hands on deck. I'm sick and tired of it. Whoever you get, build the O-line up for whatever quarterback you bring in here, because it's long overdue. I know it's not a sexy pick. It's not. But it's time to go all in on this offensive line. I'm tired of being on 3rd and 1 and being in shotgun because you're afraid that your 9 is going to get knocked off his canister. It's time to build the O-line up, and that's my take.
Here's my problem with it,
Terry.
and I get your argument, but here's my problem with it. You don't win with an offensive line. Okay? You can go ahead and take the great offensive line and say, oh, we'll get the quarterback later.
Yeah.
Then you're going to regret it. Like, what if the Bengals, instead of drafting Joe Burrow when
It's
they had the number
Penny
one
Sewell.
pick, no, the top offensive lineman that year
Yeah.
was Andrew Thomas.
Okay. I thought it was.
Right.
I thought they were debating between Sewell and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on the
Yeah.
year, but
But point is, he had a bad offensive line, but they actually got good. And people were like, oh, Joe Burrow's getting sacked all the time. I understand he's got an injury right now. They figured out the offensive line later, and it's still not even necessarily
don't-
figured out, but they
I'm
win
with you.
games when Joe Burrow's under center.
if I don't have my quarterback, I am going to have a meeting with all of my scouting department, all my scouts on the road, all my personnel people. And I'm going to tell them, I'm going to look them right in the eye, and I'm going to say, don't even waste your time scouting first-round graded offensive linemen. Because we're not picking one of those guys in the first round. We're picking a quarterback. And you know what? You grade all of the offensive linemen from rounds 2 through 7. You go scout those guys. Because we're picking our quarterback up high in the top 3. And then we'll find our left tackle or right tackle or interior lineman rounds 2 through 7. Because we're not blowing a top 3 pick on a big fat guy's blocking.
Right.
We're going to blow our top 3 pick on a 50-50 shot on our franchise quarterback.
Valdez, you kind of, when you went with the run it back, you kind of are breaking your mold because you are the draft a quarterback in every round until you get the guy.
Now, he might draft
guy.
a quarterback, too.
No. I said I would fixate on my guy.
So now you're only going to spend one draft choice on the quarterback?
Well, I think there's something to the this team is
too
not
many holes.
It's
Too
just
many holes.
yeah, it's just not good all over from offensive line to skill positions to defense. It's not a okay, we just need a quarterback to plug in here and then we can figure it out. It's not one of those scenarios.
Maybe you should amend
It's just Ron, for lack of a better phrase, just put cancer on this team
Right.
for 4 years. And I'm not trying to be funny about that,
No,
but
I
like
understand.
he's
I know
just
what you mean.
he's rotted every single position group.
Right.
Just about.
And you're not a quarterback away.
No,
I'm sorry.
We talked about this yesterday. As bad as a coach as he's been a worse talent evaluator.
Yes.
And
For instance,
GM.
if you're the Jets and you know Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be around, then yeah, go ahead, draft a quarterback in all 7 rounds.
Right.
Because you need to find one because your team is probably good enough to go to the playoffs, and if you go to the playoffs, anything can happen.
Or they
if
could
you're
help-
you're the Vikings and Kirk Cousins is going to leave, you probably have a team that's decent enough to get into the playoffs, and then when you get in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Or if the Jets had half
But-
a brain, they would have looked back at last year when they had Joe Flacco, and they would have, I don't know, maybe retained Joe Flacco or called him when they
This-
knew they were having quarterback issues.
But
Look what
this-
he's doing in Cleveland.
But this team just doesn't seem to have any assets, doesn't have anything that they can point to,
Right.
and kind of just be proud of and kind of lean on.
Despite
and
4 years of roster building by Ron.
And because of that is that Ron's just left this team so devoid of talent that you have to do anything you can to bring any kind of talent in here at every single position group.
I agree. I can't go offensive line. I just went back. All right. So Sewell was drafted the next year, Cakes.
Okay, this following year. Got
which
it.
is the 2021 draft. But they also brought in Jared Goff. So they addressed quarterback with the Goff move.
Right.
They got Sewell. I'm not discounting. You need a good offensive line, but here's an example. Last year's draft, when Trayvon Walker went 1, Aiden Hutchinson 2. All right, I guess there weren't any good quarterbacks. Quarterbacks weren't drafted high. Pickett was the only quarterback drafted last year, right? Well, with the 6th pick, the Panthers took Ikem Ekwonu, offensive tackle. The 7th pick was Evan Neal to the Giants. Did those teams get good because they drafted an offensive line? No.
I would
they
have to say no.
Well, the Giants actually, made the playoffs. But I don't think it was because their offensive lineman, Evan Neal, maybe he was a little part of it. I just think if you have a chance to take a swing at one of the best quarterbacks, you may blow it. Look, the year before, the 2020 draft, you have Trevor Lawrence go 1, and then you have Trey Lance, your guy, Trey Lance get drafted.
Yeah.
You have Zach Wilson drafted high.
I don't like claiming him as much anymore.
But think about that. Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, Trey Lance 3. 2 of those guys busts. And then 15th, Mac Jones.
Bust.
Looking like a bust. That's 25%, but you still got to take the swing.
Yep.